Okay, Mr. Leslie for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Keeley, in your opening statements, you mentioned that ESG investment strategies have broadly underperformed more diversified strategies by a specific number of 250 basis points per annum over the past 5 years. So I'm curious, in terms of real dollar values, what does that actually look like? And if there were to be a Liberal-NDP-Bloc imposed ESG mandate, how many billions of dollars would you potentially expect the Canadian pension plan, the most important safety net for Canadians, to potentially lose in the coming years?
So the Canadian pension plan, if I understand, is worth right now about $650 billion Canadian. You can just take 2.5% of that per year and subtract it from what it would otherwise be if you continue in the ESG strategies. That, of course, amounts to tens of billions of dollars, really in less than a decade. So it's quite a meaningful sum of money.
Thank you. And globally speaking, are there examples of other nations that have tried to achieve environmental targets via financial systems, and what has the results of those been?
Thankfully, no. There has been a renewed focus on fiduciary rules. I was asking one of my Canadian friends whether or not Canada has the same fiduciary rule as they have in the United States. Fiduciary rules, largely speaking, preclude the investment strategies that are suboptimal, that is to say, achieve poor risk-adjusted returns. I think that I'm not exactly sure of what the Canadian equivalent is of a fiduciary rule, but if you have one, it solves a lot of your problems.
Thank you. And you mentioned in your opening remarks that energy security is part of national security, and obviously we've had many nations come to Canada looking for clean Canadian liquefied natural gas, to which our government has decided that there is no business case because we've made it so difficult for projects to move forward. In your view, would imposing an ESG mandate on financial institutions or pension funds make it even more difficult for Canadian energy projects to access funding potentially?
It almost certainly would be counterproductive in the extreme. That is to say, what you want to do to create a greener world, which I do want to create a greener world, you need to turn brown companies green, and you actually need to stop consuming fossil fuels, and you need to switch to a much cleaner energy mix. In Canada's case, that would be more nuclear. Climate change is a huge challenge, but to describe it as an existential threat is an excellent example, and I won't use the word hysterical, of gross exaggeration that actually clouds clear thinking on the matter.
No, thank you. And I recognize that Canada has some of the most stringent environmental and labor regulations in the world. I'm a believer that we should be exporting our bounty of natural resources around the world rather than have it being produced in countries like, as you mentioned, Russia or China or India or Iran or Venezuela. Is it preferable, in your view, that we produce more in this country versus the countries I just listed or others around the world?
I applaud every member of this committee and all Canadians who are trying to do their part in creating a greener world. I just, as I tried to state in my opening remarks, feel that it's fairly logical and we should continue to expect that temperatures are going higher. So when it comes to prioritizing public assets and public expenditures, the approach of adaptation will be far better spent than mitigation.
In your view, how should we rank the importance of measuring outcomes and results of our policies? And in your view, would a ESG mandate aid the improvement of environmental outcome results in any way?
Very briefly, please. You have 10 seconds.
Yeah. Do I have time or no?
10 seconds.
10 seconds.
Basically a yes or no.
The answer is no.